The past is never dead. It's not even past.
Powerful words from Faulkner.
Aren't they just? And they really set the stage perfectly for our deep dive today. Welcome, everyone.
Glad to be here.
Today we're looking at an event that, gosh, nearly 3 decades on, still casts such long, painful shadows. The Srebrenica genocide.
A truly harrowing piece of recent history.
It really is. And it's such a potent and tragic example of how history forces societies to reckon with truth, with memory, and that very difficult search for closure.
If closure is even the right word sometimes.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
Our discussion today is grounded in a recent, very critical report from AFP. It gives a really important lens on this ongoing story.
And it's vital, I think, to see this beyond just the 1995 headlines. Understanding Srebrenica tells you so much about international justice, or its failings, perhaps,
Right.
and about post-conflict reconciliation, how messy and hard that is, and, how historical narratives get shaped, contested.
Absolutely. Essential stuff for anyone trying to grasp global challenges today. I mean, certainly for UPSC aspirants looking at contemporary history and international relations.
Definitely. It touches on state failure, intervention, memory politics, core themes.
Okay, so let's unpack what actually happened back in July 1995. Many listening will know the name Srebrenica, but the full horror of that week...
Hard to comprehend even now.
It is. July 11th, 1995. That's when Bosnian Serb forces, under General Ratko Mladic, stormed the Muslim enclave, Srebrenica, eastern Bosnia.
And crucially, this wasn't just any town.
No. It had been designated a UN-protected zone, supposedly a safe haven for, over 40,000 people?
More than 40,000, yes. People fleeing the war, looking for safety under the UN flag.
A promise that turned out to be tragically hollow.
Utterly hollow. That term, UN-protected zone, it just became this symbol of, profound failure, betrayal even.
Betrayal is a strong word, but maybe accurate.
I think many survivors would use that word, yes, because despite that UN label, Mladic's forces just swept in.
And over the next few days, the executions began.
Systematically, thousands of men and boys. Rounded up, executed, and then buried in hidden mass graves.
The scale. Over 8,000 killed, men and boys.
It underscores, doesn't it, the gap between international promises and the grim reality of enforcement on the ground, a catastrophic failure.
You mentioned the failure, the betrayal. What went wrong? Why couldn't the UN protect them? Was it not enough troops? Or the rules they had?
Well, it's complex, a mix of things, really. Firstly, the UN peacekeepers there, the Dutch-backed contingent.
Right, the Dutch soldiers?
Yes. They were, frankly, outgunned and outnumbered. They didn't have the heavy weapons, and their mandate, their rules of engagement, were very restrictive.
So they couldn't really fight back effectively?
Not against a determined force like Mladic's, and perhaps even more critically, there was a real lack of political will from the big international powers.
To do what? Send reinforcements?
Yeah.
Airstrikes?
Exactly, to intervene decisively, to back up the safe zone promise with credible force. So the idea of a haven, it was just tragically disconnected from the actual military and political commitment.
A hard lesson in the limits of international protection.
A very hard lesson.
And the aftermath.
Yeah.
Well, it's this decades-long, incredibly painstaking process, isn't it? Trying to find remains, identify victims, give families something.
An immense ongoing effort. You mentioned AFP's report. It really highlights this.
Yes. So after nearly 30 years, they've identified around 7,000 victims, found their remains, given them a proper burial.
Which is incredible forensic work, often involving DNA.
But still, about 1,000 remain missing. 1,000 families still waiting, hoping.
And the discoveries are getting rarer now. Mass graves aren't being found often.
The last significant find was, 2021? Remains of just 10 people. Found miles away.
180 kilometers away, yes. It shows how scattered the evidence became, how hard the perpetrators tried to hide it.
And while those numbers are stark, the AFP report brings it down to the human level. There's this story of Mirzeta Karic.
A 50-year-old Bosnian Muslim woman.
Yes. And this year, she's preparing to bury her father, Srebrenica Alec, at the July 11th commemoration in Podgorica.
But it's not. It's not a complete burial, is it?
No, that's the heartbreaking part. After all this searching, decades, they found only one bone, his lower jaw.
Just the jawbone.
And she's decided to bury it now, mainly because her mother is very ill. She wants her mother to see her husband laid to rest, even like this.
You can only imagine the complex emotions there. Relief at finding something, but also the profound pain of its incompleteness.
And the loss for her family, it's just staggering. Her father, Srebrenica, he was killed trying to escape through the forests.
Like so many others.
His son, Sejdin, her 22-year-old brother, also killed. Then her father's 3 brothers and their 4 sons. Her uncles, her cousins.
A huge part of her family wiped out.
When her father's buried this July, he'll be the 50th immediate family member she's laid to rest at Potokari Cemetery.
50. It's almost impossible to comprehend that level of loss.
She said, and this really hits hard, "I've been able to endure everything, but I think this funeral will be the worst. We're having a bone buried. I can't describe the pain."
That quote, it just lays bare the ongoing trauma, doesn't it? And it forces us to think about that word closure. What can it possibly mean here?
Right. Is it even achievable?
Perhaps not in the way we usually think of it. For Mirzeta, for others, maybe it's less about closing a chapter and more about acknowledging, honoring.
Finding even a fragment like that jawbone.
Yeah.
It's a tangible connection.
Exactly. It's incredibly significant. It allows for mourning, for a grave site, for some small measure of dignity restored. It's about giving names back to the nameless piece by painful piece.
This individual pain is immense, but it also connects to the bigger picture, doesn't it? The fight for accountability, for truth.
Absolutely. There has been accountability, at least at the top level.
You mean Mladic and Karadzic?
Yes. General Ratko Mladic, now 83, and the former Bosnian Serb political leader Radovan Karadzic, 80. Both were convicted by the International Tribunal.
Life sentences, right. For war crimes, including genocide in Srebrenica.
Correct. Both are still incarcerated. And those convictions were hugely important. Landmark rulings in international law.
Setting precedents for holding leaders responsible.
Precisely. Aiming for deterrence, for some form of justice. But, and this is a huge but.
There's always a but in these situations, it seems.
Isn't there just? Despite those court verdicts, a real reckoning within Bosnia, within the different communities, especially in the Bosnian Serb entity, Republika Srpska, that hasn't really happened.
What do you mean by reckoning?
Well, the core issue is genocide denial. It's persistent. Political leaders in Republika Srpska, they often refuse to use the word genocide for what happened in Srebrenica. They downplay it.
So the official court rulings aren't accepted there?
Widely rejected or minimized in official discourse. Nira Savanovic, a researcher quoted in the AFP piece, she puts it bluntly, this denial is trivialized.
Oh, trivialized. Wow.
She says it's rare to find someone in Republika Srpska who actually acknowledges it was genocide. And the current president there, Milorad Dodik,
he's often in the news for nationalist rhetoric.
He's a leading voice of this denial. A study found him mentioned dozens of times in media reports just this year, denying or downplaying the genocide.
So this isn't just fringe opinion, it's mainstream politics in that part of Bosnia.
Yes. It shapes public understanding, even education. It makes any genuine, shared path towards reconciliation incredibly difficult. Almost impossible, you could say.
So what's the international community doing about this denial?
Well, one significant step was taken last year. The United Nations established an International Day of Remembrance for the Srebrenica genocide.
Despite opposition.
Oh, yes. Strong protests from Belgrade, from Serbia, and from Republika Srpska leadership. But the UN resolution passed. It was a clear statement on the international stage, pushing back against the denial.
But on the ground, the division remains stark. The AFP report notes something quite jarring happening this year.
Yes, the counter-commemoration.
Exactly. On the same day as the Srebrenica commemoration, July 11th, political leaders from Republika Srpska and Serbia, plus Serbian Orthodox Church figures, they'll gather nearby.
In Bratunac, which is right next to Srebrenica.
And their event. It's to commemorate Serb victims of the war in that region. Over 3,200 soldiers and civilians, they say.
It sets up a direct competing narrative of victimhood on the very same day.
And visually, too. They apparently hung portraits of hundreds of these Serb dead along the road near the Srebrenica Memorial Center.
It's a very deliberate act, a very pointed message.
Emir Soljagic, the director of the Srebrenica Memorial Center, he had a powerful take on this.
What did he say?
He said, essentially, these people are not participating in the same debate. They're having a conversation with themselves, and they are still in 1995.
That really captures it, doesn't it? The entrenchment, the parallel realities.
It speaks volumes about how deep the divisions in memory run. How can you reconcile when you can't even agree on the basic facts of what happened?
You really can't. One side is commemorating a genocide acknowledged by international courts. The other is focusing on its own victims and framing the conflict very differently, often denying the genocide happened at all. It shows the battle for truth, for historical narrative, is far from over. It's actively being fought right now.
Such a sobering deep dive. We've touched on the terrible human cost, the families like Mirzeta Karic's still searching for pieces of their loved ones.
That personal quest for closure, however incomplete.
And then this wider ongoing battle over truth, memory, denial, all playing out in a region still politically fractured almost 30 years later. History isn't past it all there.
No, it's very much present. It's lived every day.
We hope this discussion, drawing on that AFP report, has given you, our listeners, some deeper insight. If you find these deep dives valuable, please do consider liking, subscribing, perhaps leaving a comment. We do read them.
Absolutely. And it leaves us with a final thought, really. Something to chew on. How do societies move forward from such trauma when history itself is contested so fiercely? When you have such starkly opposing views of the past, like we see with Srebrenica?
Yeah.
What does this case tell us about that long road from conflict to, maybe not perfect reconciliation, but at least peaceful coexistence? And what's the right balance between international pressure, like the UN rulings and remembrance days, and the need for local political will, which seems so absent in some quarters?
That's a crucial question. The Srebrenica story, sadly, suggests that road is incredibly long and maybe, just maybe, requires confronting those narratives head-on, however uncomfortable.
Indeed. A challenge not just for Bosnia, but for many places grappling with difficult pasts.